Hi, we're Victoria and Mariam, and this is part two in our Dialogues webinar series. Now that you have an idea of what a Dialogues project is and who might offer and participate in one, you might be considering applying to direct one yourself, or maybe to help someone else apply. Your first question is probably, where and how do I start? This video, the second of three, will help answer that question. First, we will give you a tour of the Notice of Funding Opportunity, or NOFO or guidelines, and related resources that offer guidance and instructions for you in preparing your application. We will walk you through these resources and offer you tips for making the strongest case for your proposed project. This is an overview and will not address all of the details of the NOFO, but it will help you to navigate the document and the resources available to you.
One question you might ask yourself at the outset of your process is, what are some of the drivers of my project? Are any of the following things inspiring your project ideas or aims? Any of the following could be starting points for a dialogues program. For example, an educational, social, or communal need or challenge that you wish to meet, such as community dialogue or engagement, student intellectual growth or integration, increased or deeper understanding of local or regional culture, or support for veteran transition to or integration into civilian life. It could be a set of questions or resources such as an archive or collection, a museum exhibition, an interest in a public seminar on veterans and homecoming, or on ethics and military service. It could be an organizational strength, for example, an existing program such as a bridge program or a virtual seminar series, a cohort with specific expertise, or a center that offers public humanities programs. It could also be a particular group or audience that you aim to serve, such as student veterans, residents of a group facility, an affinity group, or a virtual community. We can't emphasize this enough, and this is true across all NEH grant programs. You are welcome to talk to a program officer at any stage of your project development. Don't worry that you might be bothering us. Working with applicants is an important part of our job, and it's one we really enjoy. It's exciting to hear about your project ideas and your intentions, and we really want to help you make your applications stronger. Is your project idea a good fit for the Dialogues grant program? Now might be a good moment to recap the Dialogues mission and requirements as we turn to application materials and guidance more specific to this grant program. As you'll see from the slide, the Dialogues Grant Program supports in-person, virtual, and hybrid format preparatory and discussion programs that enhance veterans and non-veterans' understanding of diverse experiences of military service and war. Dialogues projects can create communities of inquiry by building and training a cohort of discussion leaders who will engage participants in recurring, in-depth group discussions of meaningful themes, sources, and issues. Dialogues preparatory programs and discussion groups may include exclusively veterans, including a subset of veterans such as students or residents of a group facility, non-veteran students or members of the public, or any mix of these groups. As you can see from the slide text, the $100,000 grant supports two required components: discussion programs and preparatory programs and the planning of those programs. The page pictured here is called the Dialogues resource page. Every NEH grant program has a page like this. It contains not only the forms and links you need to prepare and submit your application materials, but it also contains a range of resources that can help you develop and articulate your project ideas and plans more fully. The top of the page features an overview of the program and a grant snapshot, which provides the essential details such as the deadlines and a brief description of what kinds of projects the specific grant program supports. Scrolling down this page, you will find next the webinar videos and information about how to reach our program staff. Below that are the 4 sections or the steps for applying for a Dialogues grant. As mentioned before, you are welcome to submit a partial or complete draft of your proposal for NEH feedback at any stage of your planning, up to the August 1st, 2024 deadline for this cycle. We will return to this option in the How to Apply section later in this webinar.
This video will focus on the first section, Step 1, review your application package. And the Part 3 video will take you through the remaining sections. Below the application materials section is the program resources section, in which you will find a document with answers to the frequently asked questions that we receive from applicants, an optional preliminary sketch form that helps you create an outline of your project ideas for NEH staff feedback, and a list of recent grants awarded by this program within the past few years. And still within Step 1, the sample application narrative section provides materials from successfully funded projects. These include the whole proposal narratives and some related materials, such as the preparatory program schedule or the syllabi for the discussion programs. We have examples of proposal narratives for both new and returning projects that have been funded. We recommend reading all of the samples, as they enable you to see a variety of topics, types of applicant organizations, thematic approaches, and formats. These are samples, not models. So you don't need to do exactly what these applicants do or how they do it. But we hope that they also help you see how these applicants have crafted a persuasive presentation and explanation of their project. Seeing a real-life example may help you as you work through how to balance breadth and depth in your proposal. It might illustrate a way of being clear and concise as you provide both the big picture of your project goals and enough concrete specifics to show us how you'll get there. Okay, now that you've seen what is available on the program resources page, we will turn back to the vitally important document we mentioned before. Under the application materials heading, you will find the links for the Notice of Funding Opportunity document and the grants.gov application package. If you would like to follow along, you can download the PDF version of the NOFO by going to the link pictured above. This part of the presentation will roughly follow the order of the NOFO. This document is your blueprint for building a strong application, so we encourage you to become very familiar with it. While today's presentation will not cover every detail contained in the NOFO, we will give a general overview, highlight some of the most important parts, and clarify some points of common confusion. Once within the NOFO document, you will see this table of contents for the guidelines. The guidelines offer a fuller description of the program purpose, applicant eligibility, and step-by-step guidance for the components of your application. Regarding eligibility, it may help you to know that Dialogues and all other Education Division grants are institutional grants made to either accredited educational institutions or to nonprofit organizations. The specific eligibility information can be found in Part C.
What could making a good case look like? Here are some general principles that would hold across all our grant programs. You will need to make sure that your proposal addresses the review criteria in a clear and explicit way. On the slide is a list of the categories of evaluation criteria. The full list of evaluation criteria for Dialogues review is on pages 30 to 31 of the NOFO. Keep this review criteria at hand throughout your application preparation, so you'll be keeping in mind the ways that reviewers will be asked to think about your proposal. So how can you do the best job of this within your proposal? Pay close attention to the bullet points or the prompts that appear underneath the categories of review criteria. And then, after you have drafted your proposal, look at what's written there and be sure that a reader will have strong, positive answers to how well your proposal addresses each of them. Ideally, they'll be won over by the time they finish reading your narrative and then their positive assessment will be strengthened by what they find in the other attachments that follow it. On this slide is a list of the elements of the narrative. This section of the guidelines, section D2, contains vital guidance for the formatting and the content of all of the parts of your application. We will focus most closely on some of the key sections of your proposal narrative. Pages 10 to 12 of the NOFO document contain the instructions for each section from A to H of the narrative portion or attachment 1 of your application. Please note that section B is only for prior dialogues grant recipients. You can skip, or you should skip, section B if you are proposing a project that has not previously been funded by NEH. A key part of your proposal is the project's intellectual rationale, or section C. In this section, you should explain your project's goals and rationale for its overall selection of themes, topics, conflicts, and sources. How will these form a connected program of study for its intended audience? How will your choice of the particular approaches and structure for the project support its aims? One example of a succinct framing of a proposed project's intellectual rationale can be found in this opening paragraph from the sample narrative for a new project titled To the Battlefield and Back Again, Conversations on War, Trauma, and Life After Service, from University of Colorado, Colorado Springs professors Max Schulman and Jennifer Kling. In this example, quote, they say, quote, our goal is to connect with our local veteran and active duty communities, and via the discussion of philosophical and dramatic texts that span millennia, encourage contemplation and understanding of war as both a near universal human construct and an experience that is deeply situated in and dependent on particular socio-political contexts. These present and former service members, along with their loved ones, face the questions, anxieties, and pain, physical, psychological, emotional, and social, that are a result of going to war, engaging with the traumatic effects of warfare, and returning from war. For our unique community, we propose 3 extended community-focused discussion groups based on these essential aspects of military service. Part 1, discourses on going to war. Part 2, the modern battlefield, warfighters and trauma. And Part 3, coming home or home front. We will consider these themes in relation to the Trojan War, World War II, and Afghanistan, Iraq, exploring them specifically through the study of philosophical and dramatic text. Another example from the sample narratives comes from New York University's Life After Prison, Life After War, Veterans in Transition to Civilian Life, a proposal for another new project in which they connect an identified need and a purpose with their intellectual rationale for the choice of conflicts and texts to be studied. Quote, our discussion program will focus on 2 wars, World War I and the war in Afghanistan. There are similarities between the veteran experience in connection to these 2 conflicts that are particularly apt for the focus of this project on reintegration into civilian life. Key among these parallels is the challenges encountered when returning from a war abroad that feels geographically and experientially distant for loved ones on the home front, thereby inhibiting their understanding of the veteran's experiences. Relatedly, there are humanities texts arising from both of these wars that capture the experience of reintegration in ways that work synergistically with the themes of alienation and moral injury, i.e., injury to one's moral conscience, which are central to this project. These are 2 ways that one's intellectual rationale for a project can be framed. You can look at all 4 sample narratives for further guidance. The heart of most dialogues projects are the discussion programs, which benefit from all the collaborative thought and planning by the project team, from the preparation and mentoring of the selected discussion leaders, and from the diversity of perspectives and experiences of all those involved in the discussions themselves. The participants figure centrally, of course, but so too do the resources, the settings, the roles played by the discussion facilitators, and the overarching questions and ideas being explored. This section of the proposal is your chance to show the reader how you envision your discussion program working and what its humanities content and overall trajectory will be. You have two key places to elaborate on your discussion programs, this section and your discussion program syllabus. For illustration, you can refer to both of these sections in all of the sample proposals on the website. I will touch briefly on one excerpt here, but you will find it helpful to read through the entire samples provided on your own time. As you do so, please note that the section headings will differ in some of these samples. You should pay closer attention and the instructions that they provide for your narrative organization and formatting. Nevertheless, these sample proposals offer you a variety of approaches to presenting the conceptual frameworks and themes, the guiding questions, the sources, the format, and the settings for the discussion programs. One example of a discussion program description comes from the Providence Clemente Veterans Initiative, or PCVI. This was a new Dialogues grantee that was building on an offshoot of an NEH-funded and established humanities seminar program, the Clemente Course in the Humanities, which were offered to marginalized adults in many communities throughout the nation. Here is how it presents its thematic overview, foci, and approach. Quote, the PCVI Dialogues will address actual military conflicts like the Peloponnesian War, the Civil War, Vietnam, and the post 9/11 conflicts, but also the external and internal, sometimes less visible conflicts that soldiers experience in service and upon coming home, including but not limited to PTSD, moral injury, reintegration into family, and isolation from community and civic life. Readings will explore a diversity of voices on courage, love, loyalty, patriotism, citizenship, honor, obligation, and how these all operate on the battlefield, at home, and in civic life. This will be done through deep reading and discussion of three themes at the level of the individual and the nation. The first, the decision to go to war. The second, the experience and impact of war. And the third, coming home in the aftermath of war. History, literature, and moral philosophy will be woven together in a rotating schedule organized around the four conflicts. Pages 5 to 8 of the narrative contain this PCVI's narrative treatment of the discussion program foci and trajectory, and pages 19 to 20 of this of this narrative present of this PDF, present the syllabus for the entire seminar. This applicant goes on to describe the audience and setting for its program as follows, quote, the proposed Providence CVI Dialogues is aimed at veterans struggling with readjustment to civilian life, regardless of discharge status. Dialogues will run through the 2019 to 2020 and 2020 to 2021 academic years from September to early May, and will meet twice a week for 2 hours a session for 12 weeks in the fall and for 12 weeks in the spring. Each course will enroll 15 to 20 students. For an example of a shorter discussion series for members of the public, you can look at the Minnesota Humanities Center sample narrative, pages 9 to 10, and for the attached syllabus, pages 19 to 20 of that PDF. Preparatory programs. For this program, we'll look at a sample from the same proposal mentioned in the discussion program section. This PCVI Dialogues proposal proposes a preparatory program for discussion programs that will, quote, be taught by 5 faculty experienced in leading discussions of humanities topics with low-income adult learners and with veterans. In the Clemente model, an academic director who teaches one of the disciplines is present in every session. The director's role is to provide students with logistical and material support as needed to help students recognize common ideas across the disciplines and in-class discussions, and to ensure that best practices for teaching and inclusion are implemented in all class meetings. PCVI Dialogues faculty will participate in a preparatory training program, co-sponsored by Operation Stand Down and the University of Rhode Island, and to be held over 2 days in July 2019 and July 2020 at URI's downtown campus. 2 veterans who completed the spring 2019 PCVI Seminar will be hired as dialogues facilitators and will help to organize the training and participate in it. They will also help with student recruitment and have a variety of duties. The training program will give all in attendance a sense of what working with veterans will be like and enhance the ability of faculty to lead open and inclusive discussions across disciplines. We will accomplish this through reading relevant texts, listening to veterans and those accustomed to working with them, and discussing the best ways to make our dialogues engaging, inclusive, and fruitful. Participants will read a short list of materials prior to the training. You can read or find further illustration of other preparatory programs in the sample proposals not mentioned, but indicated at the bottom of the slide.
What do you hope to achieve with your project, and what kind of scholarly and experiential expertise do you need to achieve it? Consider partners with complementary strengths who you could involve in the planning process for your project and involve them as early as possible. How could your own or partner organizations or institutions support the activities you plan and the resources, and what resources could you build or draw on? Similarly, think about the audience for your project and their access to the programs you seek to offer. What kind of impact could your programs have if offered virtually? How could you structure and support the learning and interactive exchange in that format? If you plan to offer in-person programming, what kind of venues or settings would best serve your project needs? In what ways will this inform your project design and evaluation methods? Beyond the narrative section of your proposal, you will also need to consider your work plan, which is attachment 4 of your application. Your work plan can be in any format, a chart or a narrative or a timeline. You should use this document to map your objectives, timeframes or deadlines, assign team members, and expected outcomes. We've discussed a lot of ways for you to develop a strong proposal for a Dialogues grant and have shown you the criteria for review or evaluation of applications. It is vitally important that you pay attention both to the formatting requirements, such as the mandatory page limits for the narrative and the acceptable attachment format. These requirements are not negotiable, and we hate to see applicants put so much effort into preparing a strong application only to have it ruled ineligible and not make it to that review stage. You should write your narrative so that a generalist scholar can understand it, and remember that all parts of your application should work together. You won't be in the room to explain yourself, so make sure that your proposal makes the strongest case. Be strategic, be explicit, and be clear. You might find it helpful to have a colleague from outside of your project team read and offer feedback on your proposal. That's because we recruit peer reviewers with a variety of scholarly and experiential backgrounds to evaluate proposals. All eligible proposals will be reviewed by panels, and all applicants can request and receive their evaluation comments and ratings after the close of the review process. So this ends this section of our webinar, and we just wanted to reiterate the resources that you will find on the Dialogues program page, and encourage you to attend the July 2nd live Q&A session, which will be at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. And also send us, if you wish, your optional draft or a preliminary sketch of your proposal for review and feedback. The deadline for submitting these is August 1st. And your draft doesn't have to be perfect or near complete. For us to take a look at it, and your preliminary sketch form can be found on the program page. And we're always here at dw@neh.gov to answer your questions and wish you the best of luck. Thank you.
Thank you.